I've been a Christian, but I almost coming to the Hill, I felt like a new Christian. And I felt like things finally started clicking that I had never, like, I don't know what it was. Like, I heard these truths, like, growing up or whatever, but, like, the fact that Jesus lives in me, like, I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, he actually lives in me? Like, that's unbelievable.
Welcome to this week's episode of the His Hill Podcast. My name is Kelly Daugherty, and I'm your host. I have with us today an alumni who is here for, I guess you've been here for about 10 days?
Just about.
Yeah, okay. And she's here. Did you volunteer last week? Were you actually working in camp?
Yeah, I was on support staff.
Okay. So Ericka Neff is here. And she's the sister, a lot of the alumni will know this, but she's the sister of the other voice that you hear on the podcast every week, Lizzie, who happens to be sitting in the room with us now. So Ericka is actually, she's flying out today, but she was willing to come in this morning and sit down for a conversation. So Ericka, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's good to have you. Thanks. And really, thank you for doing this, because I know it's a busy day getting ready and all of that. So thanks for doing that. Ericka, what year were you a student?
So I came a semester late, quote unquote. So I came in the January of 2020, and then I ended up leaving winter of 2021.
Okay. So you were here, wow. So your first semester was cut very short.
Yeah, it was so funny. Yeah,
because of COVID. Yeah, we had Jared and UNA last week, and they were talking about that and how they had just started to date. Yes. And all this happened, and they're being from different hemispheres. How interesting that was for them to end up really together.
Right.
So, wow. So you went home during the during the epidemic. Then we opened up really in the fall, right? Yeah, we opened back. So you just came right back after.
Yeah, and actually I had come for that camp season of 2020. And
that's right. So
that was so fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were only gone for a few weeks and then back for camp. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your childhood. Where did you grow up?
Yeah. So I was born in Apopka, Florida. We grew up there for a couple of years. My folks had moved down because my dad was going to seminary down there. So he's originally from Pennsylvania, and my mom's from Massachusetts. But then they moved us all. Well, they moved my sister and themselves down there, and then they had the rest of us. So there's 5 kids. So I was born in Florida, and then we moved up when I was almost 6 to Pennsylvania, and then so that feels more like home to me.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So how many? There's 5 kids.
Yes.
Where do you fit in there?
I'm the baby. I'm the youngest.
Are you? And Lizzie, where do you fit?
I'm the sandwich kid.
Okay, so Lizzie's right in the middle. Okay, so what was it like? So your dad went to seminary. Was he a pastor?
He was in leadership in one of the churches in Florida. Mm-hmm. I was so young that I really didn't know kind of what his role was in that. But then when we moved up to Pennsylvania, he didn't go back into leadership in church. We were all just kind of going to church together. Mm-hmm. But it's just in recent years, like the last 4 years, he's been an elder at our church. Okay. And that's been really cool to see him in that role. And it's been really sweet.
Good.
Yeah.
So you grew up in a Christian home?
Yes.
Yeah. When did you become a believer?
So I became a believer probably around the age of 6 or so. We went to this homeschool co-op. We were all homeschooled up until 6th grade, and then we went into public school. And it was at this homeschool co-op, and we had this like rest time. And we were like, okay, everyone sit on your carpet square. And they would put in a cassette tape. I do know what those are. They'd put in a cassette tape, and we had like story time. And I remember like sitting there, and I don't remember what the story exactly was about, but it was just it was actually kind of startling to me, because it was talking about like heaven and hell. And I was just sitting there. I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, I don't want to go to hell. And I was like, probably prayed like 50 times, like, Jesus, please come into my heart, just to make sure that I did it right. I was like, please come in. I was like, I don't want to do it. But I think really that was just like a launching pad into something better.
Okay.
But I do think that my realization in that moment was like, I know Jesus is good because I've seen how he's been good to my parents and my family. And so I can trust him, and I know that. And so if he's the way, and and that I don't go to hell and I can go to heaven, then I want him, is kind of the initial thought.
As best you could understand at that time.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So, okay, then what was it like for you after that? You growing up as a Christian, you were homeschooled until you said 6th grade?
Yeah, up until 6th grade. Mm-hmm.
So what was life like as a Christian?
Yeah, well, when I think of my testimony, I feel like it's split into like a couple core segments.
Okay.
And so I always think of, again, that point as like a launching pad. And then I felt like I was super blessed to grow up, in the home that I was in. And my dad, he's kind of like really professorly, it kind of seems like.
Okay.
He's down to earth, but he's professorly at the same time. And so I think one of the perks of being the youngest was that we would all eat dinner together as a family, like usually Monday, at least Monday through Thursday, and sometimes Friday. And then we would have no distractions at the table. We would all be having a conversation. Some nights were quick. Some nights you'd be there for hours just talking.
Okay.
And I think especially my brother Elliot, he's a little bit more philosophical in his thinking. And so he was developing a lot of questions. And then I would say also our sister Erin, she would ask different questions that were kind of prodding at her mind. And so I got to just glean from what they were asking, because I was like, I don't know to ask that question. But we would all be sitting there, and then I would just be intaking all of this like wonderful like truth or information, be like, wow, I never thought to ask that. Or like we're talking about these theological conversations and I'm in middle school. And it's just normal to know what this or that is. And so I think that was very impactful. But I would say unintentionally, in 8th grade, I just started to realize how good God was. And it was really because I loved school so much, and I was so sad it was summertime. And I was like, oh no, it's summer. I have so much time on my hands. And so then I was like, well, I want to develop a habit this summer. And so all of the Neffs, we would stay up really late, like talking to each other. And so what I would do was I would be like, okay, everyone, I'm going to bed. And so I'd say my rounds of good nights, and then I would go into my room, and so they would think I was sleeping. And then I would really just pull out my Bible and start in the New Testament and like read through it. And then I had all these blank pages in the back, and I would be like writing all these verses out, and I would just try to make them look all like aesthetically pleasing and stuff. But then I would go back in like later nights and be like reading them over again because I liked my handwriting. And then I was unintentionally memorizing scripture, and I was like, wow.
Oh, that's funny.
So I think that was impactful. That summer, I always think of the verse in Psalm 34, like, oh, taste and see that the Lord is good, because I really was like, wow, like he is good. And I think that was kind of my first realization of that. Yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah.
So, I like the idea of these conversations that your dad would lead, because, often it's amazing how when we just sit down in groups and talk, it really is beneficial to hear what other people are saying, thoughts that they have that you never think of.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also to hear, maybe some people can explain things better, and you sit there and you go, I agree with that, but I've never thought of saying it like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it is beneficial, So that's neat. Okay, so you were in the Word as a child and learning without realizing you were memorizing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat. So how long did you do that?
So I really did that at least through the summer. I made it very consistent. I think I was just determined to have a habit for that summer that I wanted to keep to. So it was at least through that, but I can't remember when that kind of, I think, there were just definitely different seasons, especially in high school, where that would like ebb and flow. And there'd be seasons where I was not in the Word, of course. Yeah. And then seasons where I'd be like, I think I need to read that. And then I would go back to it. But I think, again, that was just such a pivotal point in realizing how good that was. Yeah.
Okay. What were your middle school years like?
My middle school years, I think because I was homeschooled, 6th grade, I was just like, my head was in the clouds. I was like, wow, this is so fun, all these social interactions. And I was just like, didn't realize like what cliques were. I didn't realize any of that stuff. So I was just felt so free. Yeah. And then 7th grade, it's like you become a little more self-conscious. It's kind of like the pits. You're just like, oh, 7th grade. Yeah. So I think 7th grade wasn't too good. But then 8th grade was a very redeeming year. And it was very like beautiful with different friendships that God gave me. And I think maybe that ushered me into that summer pretty well.
Okay. Were you part of the youth group in church?
I was part of the youth group. I honestly always really struggled with the youth group.
Did you?
It was kind of a negative experience, honestly, but I think at the same time I can look back on it and be really grateful for it because I think...
Well, what made it negative?
Yeah. What made it negative was unintentionally. I think, everyone at that age, you're just thinking through so much and like you're trying to figure out what's cool, what's not cool. And I think that I just never really clicked well with the girls that were my age. And I just didn't really want to be a part of some of the things that they were a part of, or the girls I did want to be hang out with. It just didn't seem like there was a natural connection there, which is okay. And so I just found myself being really endeared to my youth group leaders and was just like, I felt like I was their friends. I'd be like, hey, like what's going on? And like would really glean from them. But I think, again, that time was not wasted time. And I think the Lord really used that because it wasn't like I was just going with the crowd and like trying to be cool and fit in and be what they wanted me to be. But somehow the Lord kept me from that. And I think like I was just like when I was going to church, it was like, I'm here to learn about God. And like that was kind of like my vision for that. Whereas like other people, I could kind of look around and not that I'm like better than them or anything like that. But I think like I could see the distractions that they were facing. And somehow the Lord, it was lonely, but the Lord kept me from that. So it was kind of an interesting combination.
Okay.
Yeah.
And high school?
High school was also similar. I think I felt maybe a little bit more, secure or a little more confident in like who I was. Still insecurities, of course, but maybe a little bit more confident. But we had a wonderful, wonderful youth pastor. His name is Mark Canada, and he just the way that he would present God's word was just so impactful and just really made you stop and think about it. And he always would have this phrase that I think about it at least once a week, but he would always, when he was trying to like nail home like a point, he'd be like, guys, the potential in this room is staggering. And then you just like, I remember I just would sit there and be like, wow, like, yeah, like the potential is staggering. I didn't really quite understand it, but I was thinking about it even just a couple of weeks ago. I was like, wow, I think like he was just seeing the potential that God could use in that room. Like it was so staggering if you would let him have your heart and like let these truths really soak in and impact you. And I was like, yeah. And so I think when I'm looking at different people, like in my life, I think of that so many times, like, wow, the potential is staggering in you. Like if you just like give your heart to God, like, or like let him have that bit that you're keeping your finger on, like the potential is staggering, like what God could do with you. So it was really an impactful time. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me think of Colossians 2, where we're told that in verses 9 and 10, it says that in him, in Christ, all the fullness of deity, God, dwells in bodily form, and in him you have been made complete. Yeah. And he's the head of all rule and authority. There's no limit to what God will do, can do, and will do in the life of the one who is abiding in him, trusting him as they go about whatever there is to do. Yeah. Well, that's a good reminder that that you have in your mind that your youth pastor gave you. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so after high school, how did you end up coming to His Hill?
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny. Well, first of all, Lizzie, she went to Cape and Ray, and so when she went, she was 18, I think, or just turned 19. And when she came back, I was like vicariously living through her, like with all her stories. She's like, tell me again about this story. And so she is a good storyteller. So I would hear all these things, be like, wow, that's so amazing. And then she went away for camp, and then she did the Bible school year. And I just heard how good it was. And I could see how impactful it was too. Like she would come home, and we have a little mud room, and she would be like, I need my alone time with God. And then she would pull out her Bible and start reading it. I was like, wow, like that's like that desire that, was really instilled in her. I was like, that's just so good to see. So I think that was very impactful. But then also I graduated in high school in 2017. And then I did 2 years at our community college. And then people started asking, the infamous question, so what are you doing next? And I'm like, oh, no. I'm like, I don't know. So I just started telling people that I was going to go to Bible school. and then I was like, I should probably reach out to the registrar. So then I contacted Autumn, who was the previous registrar. And she just kept emailing me, and I was like, okay. So then I got on, I was like, well, I'll just look at more information. And then I don't know if it was just because it was so late at night, I didn't realize I legitimately applied.
Oh, that's fun.
So
you filled out the forms and everything?
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden I was like, I'm going to Bible school. And I was like, there's no turning back. So then I was like, I guess I'm saving up for Bible school. So then I saved up for a half a year, and then was planning on just going for the semester. And so that's how I ended up coming.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got here. What was it like when you got here? Because that's a funny, okay, so you kind of felt like you just ended up in this without knowing you were in this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's interesting then. So you show up. Did you have expectations?
Well, I think before I came, I went on this walk with my brother, and it was snowing outside, and we were it's so quiet, and so we were walking through the neighborhoods. And I know whenever I'm with Elliot, he always asks, so Ericka, what are you learning about God? And I just didn't want that question to be asked because I didn't have anything good to say, and I just knew it. And so we were walking through the neighborhoods, and we were close to home, and I was like, I think I'm going to make it. And then and then he's like, so Ericka, what are you learning about God right now? And I was like, oh. And I think my response, I just realized it was kind of lame in a way. And I think there can be different seasons that this response would be good, but I just knew in my heart there was so much more for me. And I basically responded and was like, yeah, well, I'm not really reading a lot in the Bible right now, but I'm just more so trying to pay attention to lyrics and worship songs and be encouraged through that. And I was just like, oh, it sounds so lame. I was like, oh, there's so much more. And I think that was just kind of the point, coming into Bible school. I always thought that it would be so wonderful to take Bible classes, but it always kind of seemed like a lofty goal, or something that was out of reach, or a pipe dream type of thing. Oh, that's unrealistic. You can't do that. And so I'd never really thought it would be mine. So then I guess coming in, I just realized I loved God, but I realized that there was so much about God that I didn't know, or I didn't know how to love. And I think I also realized that my affections were kind of out of place. I love my family so much that I kind of realized, I love my family more than I love God right now. And I know that's not right, but I don't know how to change that. And so I think my expectations, I guess, going into Bible school is I know that change can be really hard for me. And I hadn't been home, away from home for more than a week before coming here. So I was like, that's going to be interesting. And then I also knew that it would be good for me. And I knew that there was going to be things about God that were so beautiful that I didn't know how to see before coming. Okay. And I was really excited about having my heart change in that way. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So had you been here before?
I visited Lizzie her spring semester in 2019.
Okay. So then the initial, because sometimes people come and their initial response to being here is this is a camp. What am I doing here? And there's been so many renovations since my first time here. when I first got here, my first thought, and the listeners have heard me say this before, but I thought, what a dump. It was, I mean, wow. I mean, this was way back, 1984, and it was, there wasn't a lot of money. Everybody with the staff were living on next to nothing, and everybody was just, everybody was just kind of getting by. But it was a tremendous year. And I found within 2 hours of that statement, what a dump. We had come with a couple of youth from my church just to check the place out for camp. Right. And within 2 hours of saying what a dump, I told my youth pastor, we've got to come here. Because I had those 2 hours to spend with the people. Yeah. And the Lord was working in my heart already. And I knew there was something special, and we had to come. And I'm to this day so thankful for that. But how about you when you got here as a student? So you didn't have to deal with, this isn't what I expected to see or anything like that. And for the listener, I want you to understand that this is no longer a dump.
I can assure you, I can attest.
Yeah, it's there's been a lot of renovations but when you did come, what was there anything that was a shock to you?
I guess, I don't know. I think maybe what was most shocking was just my own introvertedness, that I was like,
really?
Like everyone was.
You were an introvert?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I guess coming in January was a totally different thing, because everyone, like, I walk in the fish house, which is a dining hall. I walk in the fish house, and everyone's like, oh my goodness, I haven't seen you for 3 weeks. Or like, and I was just like, oh my gracious, like I feel like a fish out of water being here. And so I feel like, if anything, that was the most shocking thing. But yet I knew that was going to happen, because I was like, these people have just bonded for months.
Oh, that's right. Because you came in the second semester.
I came in January.
Right,
yeah. So I feel like that was the most surprising thing, I guess. But I think I just knew that it would take some time. And I think pretty much by the first week of February, I was like, this feels like home. Yeah. Like Texas is home.
And that's pretty typical too. Yeah. That when people come halfway through the year, those first couple of weeks can be not that they're unprofitable, but there is that adjustment. Yeah. Because, how do I fit into this? And it, like you said, it only takes a couple of weeks, and then boom, you fit right in. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it was good too for my own heart to just evaluate, like, sometimes I just think of how beautiful it is, how many prayers have been lifted up to God on this hilltop, because so many people walk this loop and they just are praying. And I think, like, that was, even though I was trying to figure things out or trying to get out of my head and being a little introspective, I suppose, but yet there was so much truth that, like, was so impactful in that time, that I just needed that time to, like, walk the loop and just pray about it or think about it and just be impacted by it, kind of. And yeah. And people were very, very open and willing to talk with me and get to know me. So it wasn't anything that way, but I was thankful for that time too. Yeah.
What are some things that the Lord worked in your heart during your time here as a student? Yeah.
Well, I think one of the first truths that was just so mind-boggling to me was kind of brought about in your Hebrews class, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's funny, because I didn't, you had to listen to that on tape, I guess.
No, you came in January, the first month of January.
I taught Hebrews that. Oh, it was Acts I taught late. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Acts I listened to online. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But Hebrews was just so good and so impactful. And I think, like, it's still how often the truths in Hebrew just come to my mind of the fact that Jesus is better. And I just loved, like, that comparison. It's like, there are so many things in this world that are truly, like, they're good. Yeah. They're good. And, like, I think especially, like I just said earlier with my family, it's like, my family's good. And, like, they're a good blessing. Yeah. But, like, Jesus is always better. Yeah. And, like, Jesus is supreme. And I think, like, that was so good to hear that. And then also, I think the click for me was just like, I've been a Christian, but I almost coming to the Hill, I felt like a new Christian. And I felt like things finally started clicking that I had never like, I don't know what it was. Like I heard these truths like growing up or whatever, but like the fact that Jesus lives in me, like I was just like, are you kidding me? Like he actually lives in me. Like that's unbelievable. Like, and I was just like elated and just would pull different friends aside and be like, did you hear what it said? Like, did you see what it said, like, in this passage? And I would, like, read through a whole chapter, and they were in class. They're like, yes, Ericka, yes. I would be like, this is so amazing. And it was just
Well, you know,
so
it's interesting that you say that, because I had similar experience. And you can, you know, when you realize, you know, for the first time, now, wait a minute, he does live in me. He is my life. This does not depend on me.
Yes.
And when you, I wish we had this on video, because you were anything but introvert. I mean, I wish the listeners could see the hands, could see everything going. But anyway,
so
Lizzie's
funny.
just sitting here laughing and nodding her head like this is just par for the course. But I wish we had a mic on Lizzie right now.
That's great.
But I know the same thing, where you share this, like right away, you want to show this, look at this, and the response is kind of like, well, yeah. Well, what I have found out with that is that sometimes that means they haven't seen this. You know, they've heard the words, and they can even repeat it, which was where I was for years. Well, I could say the words as a student here. I came and I heard the words, and my terminology of the Christian life changed. And I even left here as a student, went to Bible college, and I started teaching youth group. I remember sitting in a basement suite or basement one time, teaching the whole youth group and telling them Christ has to live in you and through you. And we were studying Daniel in the lion's den, you know, and I remember after that study was over with, the youth pastor's wife came up to me and said, Kelly, that was very clear. And I remember being very proud of that. Saying, yeah, of course, I had no idea what I was saying. Yeah. But I thought I knew what I was saying.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, I was so full of myself. And what I mean by that is that I was so dependent on myself to be like Jesus, to be these truths in Scripture for him. And it wasn't really until I came, you know, the Lord had to work some things in my life, in circumstances, just bring me to the end of myself to realize, wait a minute, this is not about me. Yeah. This is his finished work that I'm to know as he lives through me. Yeah. And that there was that, you know, that moment of realization, you know, it's almost like someone just ripped a blindfold off of me, and I could see what I had just been feeling, you know, and it was an incredible thing. So it's always exciting to me when I hear our students say and our alumni say, you know, that just that moment of realization. Yeah. You know, I'm just so thankful to the Lord that he does that. So how did your school year go on then? Because you had to go through COVID, you came back. Did it finish well?
It finished. Yeah, it did finish well. I think, this first semester, I think my first year was just like freedom. Like it was just like, and I think the passage in Galatians has just been revisiting me recently. In Galatians 5, it's like, it is for freedom that Christ has set you free. Like, don't go back to the yoke of slavery. Yeah. And I think I just felt so enslaved and so like, oh, like, you know, you go back and you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. I feel like I need to alienate myself from God. But then it's like, you know, the passage in Colossians where it's like, you are above reproach. Like you're made new. Like this is who you are. You're holy. And like, that's like your identity. That's your new identity. And so I think like the first year was just so freeing. And then I think going into my second semester, I think that was a really good year. But I think like, I don't know. And there was something that I was really having to think through that made it like just a little bit more challenging. But again, God used that, and it like didn't return void, you know, like it was still a really good semester, I think. But yeah, and then that summer camp, I went back for summer camp then in 2021, And that was awesome. It was great being a counselor. I think you learn a lot about yourself in that context too. And
yeah, I often think that it's really neat when I see students stay on for summer, or even come back for more, because it's such a good practicum for everything that they've been taught during that year. To see that, when you're worn out, you are so physically and mentally drained, and then and then to see, I mean, it's incredible proof for us to know that, oh my goodness, this really is His sufficiency. This is His enabling, because it's nowhere
this
in
ain't
me.
me.
Yeah. And the things that He does, the things that He does in the lives of the campers, the way He uses the counselor and the summer staff, it's a wonderful way to end a school year. But go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And I think it was impactful. And again, like you said, you're at such a state of tiredness and it's almost humorous. But then you're like, wow, like you wake up and you're still tired and you're like, how am I going to do this? And you're like, okay. And we would always quote, especially my first year, be like, for this, you have Jesus. We'd all be like, it's okay. You're like, Jesus got this. And I think the days that I tried to keep for myself were like the days of biggest disappointment, and like the days that I was just like, I can't do this, and just admitting it and being like, Lord, like just help me, were the days that I just had like this energy that I was like, where did that come from? Or like, I couldn't have had that conversation with that camper like that. Like, I don't even know like where that thought came from. Like, I didn't know how to meet them.
Yeah.
So it was, just truly, I agree. Yeah, it was just really good.
Good. Now, did you stay for a second year?
Yes.
You did? Yeah. Okay, I thought you did. Yeah, it gets so confusing for me.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and I always have to ask students, what year were you here? Because they're all, they all come together, and it's so confusing for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so you did stay for a second year. How was that?
It was really good. I think, again, the first year was definitely like, okay, the Bible's your textbook, and like, that's what you're looking at. You're dissecting the passages. And, I think that was just like, wow. And then the second year is definitely like, okay, like we're going through Romans the whole like year, and like, we're going to be reading books on top of this, and, like writing some papers, or just having more discussion based, environment, I guess, in the second year classroom. So, I think it was really good. I think that it was challenging in its own ways. I think there was kind of a balance, like, okay, what is my role here, like with interacting with the first years and trying to balance that. And then, So, but also I think Romans, I really appreciated going through Romans in depth.
Because Charlie leads it through the whole year.
I believe, if my memory serves me correct, I believe it's the whole year.
Yeah, so I remember when I was the principal, Charlie told me what he wanted to see out of the second year program is that our students be able to leave here able to better articulate what it means for Christ to be their life. And what we've tried to do with that is not just verbally, but to flesh this out. And that's why we added the second year the outdoor program to it and all that stuff. But
that's fun.
I think so too. A lot of people go, "What are you crazy?" But I remember one time asking a simple question. How do you know this is true? Oh, no, I asked a question, and one of the students said, well, Christ's living in me. And I go, okay, what does that mean? And he just looked at me, and they got quiet in the whole room, and he said, he said this, what do you mean? What does that mean? That's what you've been telling us for a year and a half. Yeah. I said, yeah. Now, what does it mean? And I remember the look on his face. He just, oh. Yeah. And the whole class said the same thing. Oh. And just to see the wheels start to turn. And that's what we really just want to push. This is more than verbiage. It's more than, an intellectual gain, but this is your life. Right. Christ is your life. What does this mean? How does this look? Yeah. And there was some, every year there's some incredible discussions, like we talked about earlier with your family discussions, that with that second year class, because it's smaller, we can do that and just have these discussions. And sometimes you walk out of there kind of, worked over a little bit, because that was good.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think with like Romans, I think if I was like, what was the most impactful thing like that I needed to hear over and over again? And I think it was Charlie just saying like, guys, like Jesus never tells us like how to live the Christian life in a sense, like your to-do list. Like it's like you need to just present yourself to Christ. And I think that that's something that I just needed to preach to myself, especially in going back home, that it's like, Ericka, you know what you're prone to, and you're prone to thinking that you need to earn your way into God's favor, and you need to, try to make him proud. And like when you fail, you just feel miserable and feel so bad, and like you need to make yourself right. And it's like, no, like that is going back to that yoke of slavery, and like it is not freeing. Like that is not freedom, and that's not what Christ saved you for. Like that, like you are living outside and you're going back to your old self. Like it's not the new self. It's not the new creation that you're living in. And like what God has given you, it's like present yourself to Christ, and he will take care of it. Like you need only be silent, and the Lord will accomplish what concerns you. And it's like that's what you need to keep preaching to yourself, because we're so prone to be like, I don't deserve this, so I need to do something. I need to do it. Yeah. And it's like, no, that's not what Christ wanted for you.
We were talking about that yesterday at work. Every morning we start with devotions. That's and we were talking about this, that we become so captivated by our failure.
Yeah, absolutely.
That I can't believe I've done this again. I can't believe I'm in this place again. When am I going to stop this? Yeah. And it is an enslavement. It's an enslavement to my flesh, to myself. And so often we choose to stay there.
Yeah.
Moses, I think this passage is so interesting, chapter 3, where he's there before God at the burning bush. And God tells him, this is what I have for you to do. And his response is, who am I?
Yeah.
What was a great response, because he didn't stay there. It took him 80 years to come to that point. In chapter 2, he thought he was all that and more. And now 40 years later, at the age of 80, he's been brought to the point where, who am I? But his next question was, who are you?
Right.
And that was when God was able to say, I am.
Yeah.
And, you name it. You name your problem, I'm your solution.
Yeah.
Your fear, I'm your courage.
Yeah.
And you can go through all these things and find, but so often we don't go past that. Yes, you in and of yourself are a horrible failure.
Yeah.
Praise God. That's got nothing to do with who you are in Christ.
Right.
And never will.
Right.
And we, confess. Sure, of course. Bible tells us to confess and move on. Trust him.
Yeah.
That's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, okay, you've been gone now for, gone. You haven't been a student for, what is it, 3 years?
I think it's about 3.5 and a half years now.
And what are you doing now?
So I'm back in Lancaster, and
because if you're from Lancaster, you're always back in Lancaster.
You're always knowing every.
Yeah, Lizzie's over here. I haven't been.
Lizzie's proving it differently at this point, but everyone does tend to come back.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm back in Lancaster, and I'm working at a little furniture shop.
Okay.
Yep. So I sell furniture and do
Amish furniture.
Yeah, actually, yeah. It's like reclaimed barnwood tables and all that jazz. Yeah, it's fun.
Okay, and I've seen in social media you've spent a lot of time traveling too.
Yes, which is really funny. Again, I think I often go back to myself before coming to the Hill and kind of peg myself like, I've never been away from home for more than a week, like is like kind of like my roots. But so I'm like, oh my goodness, like I actually went over the ocean. I'm like, that's crazy. So yes, I did do some traveling.
Okay, and all this traveling, because Christ is our life.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just when we're in the Bible. It's not just when we're going to Bible school. It's not just when we're at church. What are some things the Lord's taught you with the traveling and with your job?
Yeah. So I think, well, I guess first for my job, I remember I had, when I came back from Bible school, I was like, you know, on fire, ready to take the world on, you know, I was just like, I want to get like this great job and like blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, you know, job hunting. I was like, I can't find anything. I was like, I'm not an engineer. I can't do this. And so I was like journaling, and I literally wrote in my journal, I was like, Lord, where do you want me to be? And then my phone lit up, and it was like someone from that company like had reached out, and they were like, hey, there's a position that's open in the furniture store. And I was like, oh, I was like, I don't want to work there. And then I was like, okay, I was like, I think I should go for it. And it's just funny how like what your plans are and what the Lord's plans are. And I think like I thought I was going to be there for like 6 months or something, but now it's been 3.5 years that I've been there. And I met up with one of the gals from the Hill like early on in that, and I was she's like, how are you doing? What's it going on? And I was kind of explaining what was happening, and she's like, Ericka, it kind of sounds like this job isn't necessarily for like furthering your career, but it's more for your heart. And I think like I was like,
good friend.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And I was just kind of like, yeah, I think that that's super true. And I think like where I was with life, I think I just really needed that job and have needed it. And I've been really grateful for it. And I think it's something that I maybe didn't want, or maybe in ways that I really couldn't imagine it helping me, but it kind of helped like chisel off different pieces of pride, or expose different pieces of pride, or like, just be like, Ericka, why do you have a problem with that? Like, I think that that's a heart issue there. And like, I think God needs to work on that a bit. So yeah, the job was it has been very interesting, and I am very thankful for it, but it's definitely been a really unexpected tool of the Lord's to just reveal good things and things that are kind of yucky in my heart and just needs to be dealt with. Have you
found at work that there's been opportunity for ministry?
Yes. Yeah. I think I think that's, it's not like I'm crazy about decor.
Okay.
And so I think like in furniture necessarily, I like doing my job well, but I think like my favorite part that kind of like has kept me there is definitely the people and like the people I work with, or the regulars that come through. And I think it's just such a neat opportunity to be able to form like unexpected relationships. Because I think, when you go into different companies, I think it's more often than not like you expect the employee to be kind of like glum sometimes or just disengaged. But I think like this company is really interesting that people do really interact with the customers. And so it's like, I don't know, you just form these unexpected friendships or relationships. And I think that has been really sweet conversations.
That was one of the things that the Lord worked in my heart after leaving full-time staff. We went back to Louisiana to take care of my parents, and my everything building up to that moment had been preparation for vocational ministry. And I had been involved in it for 26 years, 25, 26, 27 years. And all of a sudden it changed. And I got depressed. And I remember Arlene pulling me aside and telling me, Kelly, you still have ministry. It just looks different.
Right.
And she was pretty firm with me on it because, she could see what was going on with me. And since that moment I've seen, there's ministry all around us. You don't have to have a title.
No.
Or a certain position.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
The life of Christ is for now, right now, in any situation. And we're to be in fellowship with Him. From that relationship, He's working, He's doing things.
Right.
Heck, I've seen where He's done things when your heart's not right. He does things in other people's life. He uses you. But it's been an incredible lesson for me. Now that we have a family business, I tell people never in 1,000 years did I think I would be making makeup, for a living.
Yeah.
But what's incredible is that how the Lord is using that for ministry, the doors that He's opened, the conversations that He's brought about, not just with employees, but with customers, with other people that we work with. It's just amazing how we limit Him You know, that ministry is only for, for the pastor or for the mission trip, or for, this particular time.
Yeah.
But Paul said, for me to live is Christ. He couldn't help but be living the life of Christ and ministering the life of Christ. And when he said that, he was a prisoner. He wasn't out preaching. He was a prisoner. And so that's a neat thing for us to learn. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And what about the traveling? How's the Lord use that in your heart?
Well, I think traveling, especially if you haven't traveled that much, I think it teaches you a lot about yourself, and it teaches you a lot about other people. And I think that
because you've traveled in groups, like
I've traveled,
with friends,
in groups and friends. And so I think this was kind of an unexpected trip with 3 friends from the Hill, and kind of all met up in Philadelphia, and then we went and traveled to Italy, and then from there took a train to Switzerland, then went to Germany, and then my friend Samantha and we ended in Ireland for just a day or 2. But it was really good, and I think that I was talking with you a little bit on Sunday about it, but I think I was deeply encouraged looking back on the trip and just seeing. It's just such a sweet reminder being at the Hill or traveling and meeting up with different alumni that, are in these different countries. And, just remembering that God is at work across the globe. I think that like you can just kind of feel like, I don't know, just kind of narrow-minded, like, okay, like, Lancaster is just like what's happening in the world, but there's so much more beyond yourself or in your world. And so I think traveling, I think especially to Switzerland, I think was super impactful because we stayed with the Kunzman family, and I think they were just really, really so hospitable and so sweet. And I think that there was just so much fellowship with conversation and just talking about Jesus and what's going on. And the one friend that we stayed with, his name's Kenny, and
what a mean guy.
Oh yeah.
Of course, we're
really
we're being very sarcastic here.
But his Samantha and I were talking with his mom, and I think it was just a really sweet moment that we were all kind of talking about the click and like when it clicked for us, like with Jesus and understanding. And I think like it was just really sweet hearing like how impactful like Kenny's time was at the Hill, and then coming back home and how that kind of poured over into that community and with his family. And like, it's just really exciting to see like what the possibilities are in Switzerland and like how that could pour over. Yeah,
there was something you said on Sunday that I was really taken with. You were talking about how traveling, you just seeing how big God is, how we can limit him.
Yeah.
But hearing people in other languages, speaking of the Lord. I think you were in a worship service or somebody was preaching or something and hearing it, the gospel being taught in another language.
Yeah. It was really cool. Yeah, we stayed with our friend Marie Hesse, the Hesse family. Yeah. They're so sweet. They're such a sweet family. But her dad was preaching, and he was so nice, and he like wrote out the whole sermon to us like on in English, so we could kind of follow along with his sermon.
Okay, yeah.
So we could kind of track with it. But there was something that was just really. Yeah, it was just really sweet. I've never been, again, outside of like the country with, the population around you speaking German or whatever. So it was really cool to go to this church and to be singing in German or to be, hearing the words spoken in German, and then just kind of thinking like, wow, like what's happening back home, or like, wow, so many people across the globe are like worshiping God right now. Like that's so amazing. Yeah. So it was really sweet.
That's something that the Lord worked in my heart here at His Hill, because it's international ministry. And when Major Thomas used to come, he used to come every Thanksgiving, and he would lead a communion service. and would use our students to serve the communion. And he would always ask one of the students who was from another country, spoke another language, to lead us in prayer.
That's nice.
And I that was always impactful on me to think, how I limit God all the time. And here's someone who's speaking to the Lord right now in a language I don't understand, but God does. And how God is doing his work all over the globe. It was encouraging to me to realize God's bigger than I can imagine. And I belong to him.
Yeah.
So that's neat.
Yeah.
Well, Ericka, thanks for spending this time with us.
Yeah.
I again appreciate you being willing to squeeze this in before taking off. And and Lizzie, we don't have a mic on you, but thanks for letting your sister do this too, because it means the day she leaves, and I'm sure you'd rather be spending time with her instead of sitting around this table. So I appreciate you guys doing this. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Thanks for listening to the His Hill podcast this week. You've been listening to our host, Kelly Doherty, along with my sister and His Hill alumna, Ericka Neff. We are in our third week of having elementary campers around the hilltop and are savoring the beautiful simplicity that comes with this age group. They all have been vivacious and fun, and a complete joy to spend the last few weeks with. Please keep praying for us here on the hilltop that we all, staff and campers, would not dismiss the stunning reality that we are seen and loved by him, and that there is purpose in each of us being here this summer. Once again, you've been listening to the His Hill podcast featuring our host, Kelly Doherty, along with Ericka Neff. Thank you so much for tuning in with us this week. Remember to keep your eyes fixed on Christ. I'm Lizzie, and we'll see you next week.